Hey ratbags, it's Jade with another return to MORIA video. Today we've got good news and bad news. We get to see the opening cinematic of the game. The bad news is there is a delay for PlayStation fans. This cinematic got shown off a couple of days ago. It's voiced by John Rhys-Davies, the original voice of Gimli, and he did an interview with Nerd of the Rings YouTube channel. So I'll only talk about that briefly at the end, but yes, the big news is a delay has happened for PlayStation. It will not be launching on the 24th of October. Instead, it's going to be now the 5th of December. Originally, physical copies were always going to be on this day. It was a bit weird, it'd be nearly 6 weeks, 5 weeks later, but that was the plan to have digital release at the same time as the Epic Games Store release on the 24th of October. That's been pushed back now to December the 5th. It kind of makes sense. Have digital and physical go out on the same day and you get a choice there to decide what you really want. They've put it down to taking additional time to improve various aspects of the PS5 version and to ensure we can deliver the highest possible quality for PlayStation gamers. Our teams apologise for the delay and fully committed to delivering an amazing experience on PS5 this December. We greatly appreciate your ongoing support and patience. In a way, this might actually be a good thing, especially for PlayStation players. You'll get now 5 weeks to decide if the game is still interesting enough for you to go ahead and buy after having seen it played by streamers or read lots of reviews. There's no denying I've seen a plethora of comments saying that the game doesn't look particularly well adapted to new consoles. It's not exactly throwing the boundaries of what gaming could be. It's fair to say that some people have been pretty critical of the way the game looks and perhaps some of the gameplay on show, so maybe now they've got more time to really decide if it's for them. I think the game's got its own charm. I think I quite like some of the art style of the game, so I've got no real problem with it. But yeah, I've seen a lot of comments complaining or saying it doesn't look very next gen or kind of what modern gaming could be. The team that made this game really are tiny, like it's a small team, it's not a big huge AAA studio, and I know some fans might complain, well why did they get the license for it since it's such a big property? I kind of like the fact that the Lord of the Rings estate or whatever did give this opportunity to a small team, because we've all seen the cash grabs that can happen and MTX stuffed into every crevice by someone like Warner Brothers with their previous Lord of the Rings games, etc. So a little bit of jank and maybe not as many resources to go into something, but with promises that they're going to keep updating the game once it's out and add more content, I'll take that over a AAA potential cash grab. But yeah, the bad points are that if you do see the game, you might not want to buy it at all now, or you're just disinterested because you've seen it on YouTube and streamers. And I notice, as being a content creator that's played a bunch of games that have released on the Epic Games Store only, the views and the hype around it is very much diminished. You just don't get the same kind of launch as you would if it was launching on Steam. Like, I can't wait, I love Lord of the Rings, I want to dive into this game as soon as I can, and thankfully it is still going to launch on Epic Games Store as of right now on October the 24th. Of course, Xbox players, you're not getting this game at least until the early part of next year, so all round it does kind of suck. What could the reasons be? Well, certification can take a varied amount of time, anywhere from 5 days possibly, but more than likely up to 4 weeks. The general advice is to get your game in certification with Sony and Xbox at least 4 to 5 weeks before it launches. Just because the game has been delayed doesn't mean it's going to be a buggy, horrible mess. It just may have failed certain aspects that are kind of basics for Sony and Microsoft. They don't check for bugs. They don't check really to see if the game's got the quality it should have. Otherwise, games like Cyberpunk would never have released. What they do check is that if you say your game is multiplayer, then basic multiplayer function is working, that you can join a server or another friend's game. If you say it supports multiple languages, then multiple languages are supported, that the interface buttons all work correctly and the menus will take you in and out of the game, etc. It can fail any number of them kind of situations, and devs normally have a small amount of time to fix it and just re-upload it for that part of the cert. If it fails too many of them certifications though, then processes, it can have to go all the way through certification again, and that can take absolute weeks, up to 4 weeks possibly. It may have passed certification, it might be in the best state it can be to actually just launch, but the devs themselves feel like they want a bit of extra time just to give a little bit more love to it, and since they've got the availability on the Epic Games Store, they feel they can delay it. And it does kind of make sense also, as I said, to launch it at the same time as the physical copy edition. So I'm not overly concerned this means it's a buggy, horrible mess, not at all. As far as I know, feedback that I saw from sources in the betas was that it was pretty good. There weren't no significant bugs or issues. So I think this is just down to a bit of extra marketing time perhaps, or just simply, yeah, wanting to add a tiny bit more polish after some of that feedback from the beta that can hopefully make it in. On Epic Games Store, they can update the game very rapidly, but on PlayStation, it can again take up to 5 days or longer to get some updates through. It does really suck. People just don't buy games on Epic Games Store like they do on Steam, so it does lose that appeal. However, I'm pleased to see the opening cinematic. We'll talk about this a bit. It's got Gimli narrating how dwarves went far and wide, restoring Middle-earth, helping to carve out and repair a lot of damage caused by the wars and stuff. But their one true home, of course, remains not theirs, and that is Moria. Also alludes to proper lore and story, that they formed caves in the glittering caves behind Helm's Deep. And interesting that Raven delivered that letter to them. Could that possibly be a mechanic in the game? Since we know there's going to be lots of beer drinking as well. And yeah, it's a nice little cinematic. Certainly I've seen worse, I've seen better, but it's nice to have just something to get you more into that story. And again and again, from all the interviews I've watched, there really do seem to be this focus on making sure the lore and the story fits within Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings, with obviously some adjustments to take in modern tastes. And the rest of the cinematic details the adventures from dwarves basically heading home through various different lands. Imagine if that ended up being like a sequel or DLC or some sort of update, that it's not just the mines of Moria, but you could explore overground places in the future. And obviously no dwarf left behind, going through the mountainous and snowy regions, hoping your beard doesn't freeze off. I did show you guys the other day that they've got a pretty in-depth character customizations. Go and check that out. And yeah, we pretty much finish off with them finding their friends outside the big gate to obviously Moria. It's a nice thing to show off, and it's got me a little bit more hyped for the release, even with the delay for sure. So hopefully I'll be here on the 24th giving you the lowdown and hopefully a review, and then once it's here in December I'll give you the lowdown on what it's like on a PlayStation 5. So make sure you're subscribed. Got a ton of guides also planned, as that's my daily bread and butter, giving you gameplay guides and tutorials. And yeah, just a quick shout out to Nerd of the Rings. Obviously they've got a lot of interviews they've done with the developers, Free Range Games, and they have got another one with John Rhys Davies where they talk about his time in obviously the movies and the lore of Lord of the Rings. Somehow you haven't missed it, I'll leave a link to it and go check it out for yourself. It's pretty long. They do talk to some of the developers as well. Sadly, I do believe there wasn't any gameplay shown off or really any more in-depth talking about what to expect. But yeah, loads of lore talk and story about his time. So go and watch it out. Are you excited still about obviously Return to Moria, as this disappointed you as a PlayStation fan? And Xbox fans, of course, you're just probably laughing because you've had to wait anyway. Leave a comment down below and make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you at Ratbags very soon.